Welcome back to session 7. All right. So we have the Cabinet Member for Customer Services, Culture, Leisure and Sport, respective areas of customer services, community engagement, library service, events, culture, heritage, museums, including Mount Edgecombe, community and use of council assets. I'd like to Councillor Pat Patel, Anthony Payne, Andy Rolfs, David Draffen and Ruth Howell form part of the officers. So Councillor Patel, if you'd like to open, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone, thank you for the opportunity to explain how we're going to make the savings and still maintain a high level of service for the people of Plymouth. We find ourselves in unprecedented times with immense pressures in budgets due to many external factors, and Plymouth is not the only authority to be affected. My teams across my areas of responsibility have been working really hard to come up with savings that we've asked them to do, whilst at the same time maintaining the service delivery as best as we can. The first area I'm going to cover is customer services, where we have an annual budget of 3.34 million. Customer service has made significant savings in previous years, and we have protected this area for 23-24, only committing to a modest saving of 50k from the support fund. We maintain our library opening hours and have made sure that our outreach activities such as Rhyme Time are back to normal with that following the pandemic. Performance in the contact centres has been challenging, and I'm sure you're all aware. We prioritise those services where most vulnerable in our city need our help. In the past year, 268 digitally excluded customers have had blue badges and bus pass appointments at Central Library, and in the last 4 months 70 customers have come into libraries to inquire what would previously have been handled at the former First Stop Shop. Our self-funded registration service will this year increase prices to maximise income, and we are performing well with strong demand and good availability of appointments across births and deaths. Weddings are growing, and we have licensed Plymouth Argyle as an appropriate venue for weddings. To date, this year, the ceremonies officers have officiated at 574 ceremonies, and we already have 432 forward appointments booked in. The coroner's team have been working under some extremely difficult circumstances recently. Deaths this year have been higher than expected. The team have been working tirelessly to ensure that the Keam inquest runs smoothly. Moving on to culture, heritage, museums and events, including my Edgecombe. This element of the portfolio has been in a growth stage since 2016-2017 with significant extra income. The delivery of the cultural, tourism and event part of the portfolio sits within economic development and is unique in that the department covers all of its costs from within income and will generate 24 million in 23-24, resulting in a surplus of 1.4 million after covering all its costs. We have driven income really hard across culture, tourism, events and Mount Edgecombe and the box. We have a 40% uplift in Arts Council cultural funding to the city, and in November we secured 4.1 million per annum, including 1.2 within that for the box. We have increased earned income at the box by 1.5 million compared to the old museum, and our events programme now covers 50% of its cost through income generating 750k per annum. Our Tourist Information Centre this year will be cost neutral for the first time, and I'm really proud that this year, for the first time, Mount Edgecombe will be cost neutral through driving income streams without any costs or cuts to expenditure, and that's cost neutral to both both authorities. In 22-23, we hosted SailGP, engaging 2.3 million people in the National Marine Park and 800k visitors to the British Art Show. Our teams targeted marginalised communities and were successful in getting visitor numbers from such areas as St Buda, including Barnbarton and Devonport, to the events. To deliver a balanced budget, we have 4 budget actions to save 257k, and we believe that the majority of this can be delivered through new income by driving income rather than cutting costs, and we maintain our world-class events and cultural programme. We have a lot to look forward to in 23-24, a brand new marketing campaign funded by Visit Britain, focusing on France and Spain, an amazing summer of events with the return of National Fireworks Championships, Armed Forces Day and Ocean City Sounds. An amazing programme at the Box, including 300th anniversary of Joshua Reynolds and developing the NMP Horizons bid. On leisure and bereavement, the bereavement service makes an annual surplus of 3.7 million with expenditure of 1.75 million. However, energy costs in this area have risen by 350k per annum. We operate across 8 sites and provide 2,500 cremations and 200 burials annually. A new crematorium built is progressing well, with steel frames now in place, and the construction is now under a design and build contract, meaning that the costs are fixed at 29.4 million. Plymouth Active Leisure. In April 22, our own trading company, Plymouth Active Leisure, took over the running of the leisure facilities in Plymouth. These included Plymouth Life Centre, Brickfields, Tinside Lido, Mountwise Pools and Plimpton Pool. After some initial teething issues caused by the speed of the takeover rather than anything else, which were ironed out very quickly, membership figures have started to increase. The main focus for PAL for 22-23 was a successful running of the facilities, and progress has been made towards things such as increasing the use of Tinside to include events and integration with the NMP, widening the participation through targeted work within communities, supporting the city's ambition to widen physical activity and participation. PAL finances are managed by the interim CEO, reporting to the board of directors. On setup, a zero-based budget was produced. This was anticipated to leave PAL with a small deficit, with the expectation of a balanced budget within 5 years. PAL's financial forecast is broadly in line with this, but with the exception of increased energy, approximately 1.1 million extra this year. Plymouth City Council provides a significant subsidy to PAL currently. This is £466,000 annually, but include an additional 250k in 22-23 to support the transition. It has been necessary to review this with the current financial climate, and there are some savings against this subsidy in the budget for 23-24 of 250k. As reported in Cabinet, it is the intention to reduce this subsidy through a range of actions, which include reviewing the charging structure, increasing income through membership, increasing income through expanding events at, say, Tinside Lido, and exploring other commercial opportunities. We also look at opportunities around Brickfield site, working with partners to bring in investment as well as provide a wider offer for the community. I hope this gives you an overview of how hard we have worked to continue to improve our services and protect them in 23-24 despite difficult financial climate. Thank you.
open up questions to the floor. Councillor Lugger, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Councillor Patel, before I ask my question, could I say it is laudable that we are still putting on great big city events and still balancing the budget in times of economic downturn. My question, though, concerns, and poor old Councillor Stoneman had a cross-examination earlier about his use of external legal services and how that has an impact on budget. Can I ask you can you give an assurance to this committee that you are reducing the number of agency workers in the council buildings, thus making budgetary savings? Thank you.
I can take that question through you, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah. So we have been actively, and this is customer services related, been actively reducing our agency staff. We've only got now, I think, about 3 or 4 staff in libraries and a handful in business support. And the main reasons for those, and Anna can come in if required, is that we're currently going through reorganisation, and when we're going through reorganisation, we usually use agency staff to protect those who are currently employed from redundancy. So there's vacancy management use of agency within customer and corporate services, not as a general rule of thumb.
Supplementary.
No, thank you.
Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Pat and policy officers. Mine's, you wouldn't be surprised for me to be asking questions on customer services. I won't say everybody, but I certainly will say, you know, people of Plymouth are probably appalled of some of the service that they're receiving at the moment through the contact centre. You've mentioned about a 50k saving. So where in the budget are you relining the service to help the people of Plymouth? Because at the end of the day, that's the service coming in, and if people can't get in to pay their council tax via phone, because they can't use an email, by the way, or even pay their land registry, anything, how are you making that happen?
Thank you, Sally, for your question. So the 50k saving is not through customer service, it's through the library book fund. So we reduce the amount of money that we're spending. It's totally not all for it's the wrong thing to call it the book fund. I think it's the stock fund. It covers a multitude of stuff that the library buys. The customer service bit has been protected, and I can tell you that the new system has been operating for a week, and the service level has gone up to 89% of the calls being answered. I know it's only the first week, and we'll have to give it time to see, as opposed to 65% previously. So things are improving, and also the face-to-face contact is improving. I can give you an example. We had someone, was it 90 years old? 90 years old, only recently came through as casework. That was referred over, and someone phoned the lady up, and were able to do all the stuff for her online over the phone, and she got her services, her issues resolved. So the system is starting to work. We know we've had challenges over the year, but we are starting to resolve them now. Thank you.
Supplementary. Do we know how much of a loss that we would have had if calls had been answered? Financial loss, I'm talking about, to other departments.
I'm not aware of that, but I don't know if any of the officers want to come in on that one.
I'm not quite sure I understand your question in terms of financial loss, Councillor Hayden.
Sorry, Andy, I'll explain myself a bit better. When people are trying to phone in to make payments, so we could then have maybe delays in council tax payments and things like that, as an example.
There isn't any evidence that we lose any revenue through people calling the contact centre. The majority of our customers pay by direct debit or through the automated service through the contact centre. So generally speaking, they don't actually hit an agent or speak to an agent to make a payment. There are still other means in the community where customers can make payments through the post office or other means. So there's no evidence that there's any loss of income.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. No surprise, the question I'm going to ask about is Sale GP. It's a huge global event, as you've waxed lyrical about today and previously, with engagement worldwide and a spectacle for our own marine credentials. Within the budget, Councillor Patel, has sufficient monies been set aside to enable us to competitively bid to bring that event back, or are you going to rely entirely on external sponsorship, as you've sort of put out there, and what are the risks involved with the city possibly missing out entirely on the event, and the knock-on effect of all the negatives compared to the positives that it has brought that you've alluded to?
On Sale GP, we have put in a bid. Sale GP hasn't come back yet with anything there. They've informed us it will be sometime at the end of this month. We wait to see. There's only a week to go, or less than a week to go. In terms of costs, yes, costs have been. I'm just thinking the best way. So it's not going to cost the city anything apart from, I think it's 350k, but that's coming out of another fund as opposed to through the budget. So, and all the costs, I'll hand over to David to explain it more.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it was a great event. Nick, I know you were very much involved in bringing it whenever it was, a couple of years ago, last year, get myself correct. And we've had bid for it. We are still waiting to hear back. We put a fully compliant bid, same value as last year in total, which I know you know what that is. We won't say it in this public space because it's commercially sensitive across all the sites. There is a debate about with Sale GP whether they have a UK event or not. We don't know what they will do. Ben Ainsley just got sponsored, a major new sponsor, which we think is a good sign, but there are many new venues coming in, a few dropping out nationally, so there's a shuffling. In terms of the budget, we were kind of the view that we needed to put in a serious bid, and we were also aware it was unlikely the council could service a high amount of revenue in this budget. So we have bid and successfully secured the full match funding requirement from the Shared Prosperity Fund, which is the replacement EU funding, and that was approved by the Growth Board and has been allocated. So in addition to that, we've also got, on the back of last year's success, some offers of real serious private sector sponsorship, which is a much greater quantum. So the combination of the two has meant that we're able to bid to the number they asked us to, in the sense of guiding us to a bid. And we were hopeful of finding out by the end of January. So I would have thought we should find out pretty imminently whether we're successful or not. But what we can say is that if we don't get it, it won't be because of the bid, it will be because of the decisions nationally about whether the UK fits in their profile. But the bid was certainly a compliant bid.
David, as usual, comprehensive. I'm really grateful and pleased to hear that that's going to be the case. I suppose trying to bring it back to the budget and David, etc. If we're going to find out soon, a little bit vague as to, you said no direct cost to the council. All I was thinking is if we're not successful, clearly whatever had been put in the budget, which would be a significant amount compared to some of the savings we're looking to make, that would potentially close that £617,000 gap. So I think from a budget scrutiny point of view, it would be very prudent for us to know that as soon as possible.
I can answer that absolutely clearly. So last year there was a corporate contingency to deal with the additional cost beyond which the events budget could deal with, which largely was the in-kind. We don't have that this year, so all of the cost, which Pat's right, is circa 350 in terms of extra one-off costs, which relates to the fee, and in addition to the added value, because it's commercially sensitive with Sale GP, is coming from what is the replacement EU funds. So if we don't get Sale GP, we'll have 350,000 to allocate to different projects, but there will be a short list of other organisations in the city bidding for that cash.
Councillor Poyser? No? Okay. Councillor Hayden again, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just going on to libraries, you said in your opening speech you were pleased to be able to keep the libraries open and running. I probably would debate that because, as you would know as a ward councillor alongside me, we don't have a library that opens fully anyway. So could you explain to me why we're using agency staff in our libraries at the moment and the cost of that? And secondly, why there is a reduction on books? I think we know the answer of that. And thirdly, where do we get the sum for e-books, please?
Thank you for your question. I'll hand over to Andy to answer that one on agency staff. On the books one, I can tell you that the 50k reduction comes from the stock fund. It's not all related to books. Some of it is the DVDs, some of the magazines we buy, and a plethora of other things. It's only 50k that we're cutting across all the libraries, not individually across one library. And on the last one, on ebooks, yes, some of it will come out of that 50k, but I don't think there's that much being cut from ebooks. But I'll hand over to Andy for the agency ones, and I'm sure one of the officers will take it up on the other points.
Through you, Chair, can I just invite Sean in, 'cause Sean's Service Manager for Libraries, will be able to provide that more detailed response on agency staff.
Yeah, that's fine, Rolf.
Yeah, we do use agency staff. They are covering some vacant posts that we have, and we use them in order to keep the libraries open on the opening schedule that we have at the moment, and no more than that. And that will be ongoing as long as you have a vacancy, but sometimes of course we fill a vacancy, so that means that we use less agency hours, which does happen as well. So it's a little bit fluid. I just want to talk about the ebooks. We're not going to take any money out of the our spend on ebooks. The £50,000 from the stock fund. As library managers, we look at our spending out of the stock fund, which hasn't this year's £275,000. So we spend that on an awful lot of things: physical books, all e-reading material, our online reference tools, some subscriptions that we have to have, some licenses that we have to have, and a few other little things as well. So to say that it's coming out of the book fund is wrong. It's not going to be straight off physical books. Our ebooks, we buy in the main a very high percentage of our ebooks and e-magazines, e-comics, e-newspapers. We buy those through Southwest Consortia led by Somerset. We're not cutting any ebook spending or the number of titles that we buy. What we are cutting is some of our contracts, and we're doing that through Somerset. So, for example, just recently we've reduced the spend on e-comics and e-newspapers, and we're looking at the same time at e-magazines as well. So again, it won't affect what our customers see, and maybe a few obscure titles or a few foreign titles that might be missing from the from some of the areas, but on the whole, customers won't notice the difference. E-magazines is e-books is actually a growing area for us, and we don't want to touch that. So I hope that adds some clarity to the e-spend.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Sean, for that. And I was a bit surprised when Councillor Patel said that the cutting of e-books, because it does say increasing on our budget papers. But can I just draw down about the agency staff of how much that is costing the library department, please?
If you don't mind, I'll answer. I don't have a figure at the moment, but I can provide that to you.
Yeah, if we can make sure that figure is provided to Councillor Hayden, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Hi, Andy.
Can I just confirm that there's no additional cost with the agency staff? They're they're budgeted posts that are being temporarily filled by an agency member of staff. So it's not an additional cost to the library or the budget.
Chair, I'm being really cheeky. Can I come back to Andy with that on that question? Thank you. Only because you left me out last time. Yeah, I totally understand that, Andy. But if we have a member of staff, it costs X amount. If we have an agency member of staff, it costs us X amount. So I'm interested in knowing the difference of how much it's costing us, because you're looking at cutting 4K from the libraries. Is probably the better way of saying it. All right, and how much would we be spending on agency? We could have more money for more ebooks.
Thank you for the clarity.
Chair, can I just say that it would be useful to have that by the end of the day if possible, so that it helps with any recommendations that we might want to put tomorrow.
I'll be happy with that.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions, but I'm going to start with libraries first of all. Councillor Patel introduced it to say he was delighted to be able to say that the libraries would continue as they are. My residents don't agree with that. We've got a state-of-the-art facility in Devonport that's open 2 days a week. We've had long conversations with Public Health and Dr. Ruth Hurrell about how some of the social indices, health indices in the ward has gone backwards. We are depriving our deprived communities there of access to libraries to be able to access work, employment, facilities, loans, etc. I'm sure you don't mean it when you say that you're delighted that you can keep it only open 2 days a week. I was looking through this budget, Councillor Patel, with some real hope that at long last, these libraries would actually have a plan. And I see at the bottom of page 25, the council consults residents on the council's re-provision of libraries, which is not going to take place, or they're likely to be in 24-25 for more savings. So does that mean that we can look forward to more library cuts, less opening hours, and less facilities for people that rely on them?
Thank you, Councillor Coker, for your question. So what I was delighted in was that we were actually able to maintain what we had. So pre-COVID, we had full-time libraries. Something went wrong in COVID, and we came out of COVID with reduced hours of libraries, and I was delighted to be able to maintain that as opposed to cut them in this time of pressure with the budget. So that's what I meant by that. Going forward, the libraries are being reviewed, and I don't know what the review will find. And it all depends on the budget pressures and everything else at the time. I'm hoping it doesn't mean further cuts to the hours, because if it means further cuts, you know, the libraries might as well not be open. So yes, I'm hoping that we don't have further cuts in the review that comes forward.
So my supplement question is just confirmation, Councillor Patel, that what you're saying is that the library opening hours are still under review and under threat. Because if I've only got, in my ward, and I know in Ham, where you've got 2 days a week, the facility to cut that is very remote, because what are we saying? There's a possibility that it won't open at all. And that is something that, as a cabinet member, I don't think you should sit there and say that's acceptable, because from where we sit, that is certainly not acceptable to the people of Devonport or Ham. And I would urge you to do everything you can to ensure that we increase the hours of accessibility to libraries in these deprived areas.
So As you know, so we've done everything we can, even down to, you know, volunteers keeping the libraries open. I can't promise you that there won't be any further cuts. It all depends on what the pressures on the budgets are going forward, and also what the review finds. I'll hand over to Andy to finish off answering.
Through Chair. Thank you, Councillor Coker, for your question. Just to confirm, so in 23-24, in order to be able to review libraries properly in 24-25 for the budget setting, we have a statutory obligation to consult with communities under the Libraries Act, and that's the plan for 23-24. So we're ready for 24-25. That does not necessarily mean a cut in library hours, but what it will look at is where we provision libraries, how we provision those libraries, and who provides our library service in the future. There may be further efficiencies by looking at our operating model, so community-based libraries, asset transfers. Cornwall do have a model, a hybrid model, where they have community-run libraries. They have Rio, who are running now the Liscard Library through a full asset transfer of the asset, as well as directly locally authority controlled libraries. So those models will be explored and consulted on as part of that library's consultation. But there is a statutory duty for the changes in the model or for libraries under the Libraries Act, and that's what we will be doing this year. Thank you.
Councillor Poyser.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, there's a lot of inequity in council services across library services across the city, as Councillor Coker has pointed out. I too was drawn to the line around consulting with residents, and I'm pleased that Andy has elaborated a little bit more about potentially how that consultation might look going on this year. But I'm actually drawn in on the word likely saving. So that says to me that there is a likelihood of further savings around potentially around operating hours within the next financial year. So is there any guarantees to say there are no further cuts to operating hours? Because I'm trying to get to a point where are we next year, first of all? I know Councillor Coker's concerns about the future and hopefully improving services, but next year, where are we with operating hours for all the services?
Thank you, Councillor Poyser. And just to confirm, there are no plans and no need to further reduce the library opening hours, so they will be as stated for 23-24.
Supplementary? Or?
Yes, sorry, my comment. So just to confirm that the current operating hours for the libraries will continue into 23-24. No increase.
No increase, but no downward spiral in opening hours either.
Just wanted to be absolutely clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Lavey.
Baroness Sanderson's carrying out a... Oh, did you say Larry?
No, I didn't make it. It's very simple anyway.
Mine was about libraries.
In respect to this spreadsheet, I'm done with libraries. In respect to this spreadsheet, Mount Edgecombe, you've got a gross expenditure of just in excess of £1 million and an income in excess of £1 million. Can you please confirm that that includes the capitalisation cost? And the reason I ask that is because in the capital cost for this year's budget, you've got £180,000 being spent on Mount Edgecombe. Okay, which is fine. Don't know what it's for, but it's hopefully it's for something sensible. But are those costs capitalised in your expenditure? Because that is not a true reflection of costs.
Yes, it is.
Supplementary? Councillor Kelly, please.
Thank you. I've changed my question based on the debate, but hopefully I'll get an opportunity to ask another one. Just picking up on the library service then. Your remit is for better use of community assets. That's what went out in the questionnaire. We've now got reduced hours And to some extent, people don't visit the library if they're not 100% sure when it's open, when it's not open. But the bit that I'm going towards is the first stop shop has been closed. It's never reopened. I understand the reasons why, but we as Plymouth City Council and you as the portfolio holder are very much put out that the library service will be extended to offer a series of additional services that the first stop shop was going to do. Now, the whole saving and why we're here about budget was, let's close the first stop shop, we don't have to man it, and we'll transfer those front of door services out into the libraries. So if anything, the libraries have now become a more important focal point and interface between our residents and the council than ever before. And backed up with that was the fact that you've reversed the proposals that I put in with regards to those people that want to phone up, don't want to wait on the phone line for an extraordinary amount of time, get cut off because of digitalisation. So if we're really looking after the most vulnerable, it seems that we're fighting left and right hand together. You're either going to promote the library service and extend what it's offering beyond books, e-service, and all the other bits that the first stop shop used to do, because that's how people want to transact. And the savings that you've made through digitalisation and first stop shop should, to some extent, be offset or reinvested back into the longer opening hours. So I don't understand the skewed policy that you've got, because if we nail it all down, Councillor Patel, you're keeping library hours the same, potentially under threat. The first stop shop's never opened, and the digitalisation, people phone me all the time and say, Nick, I give up, I cannot get through to the council. And that is what customer service is about. So can you please ensure where the money's gone with the savings, because it's certainly not enhanced the customer service proposition of PCC.
So the savings you refer to were made long before I took over the portfolio. They were made whilst the pandemic was on. And, you know, that money is obviously being recycled somewhere else into the thing. Since I've been there, the only saving that we're making in this year's budget is 50k, which is through the book fund, for want of a better word. That's the only saving that's been made there. In terms of staffing, we've kept the same number of staffing. The hours that the libraries are open, they're open the same number of hours. I would like to see a better use of the library service, and I have asked officers to look at what other facilities could be put into the libraries to extend the hours, such as the health hubs and what have you. That's still being explored. I don't know where we are with that yet. It's a long, as you know, with anything that the council does, it's a long drawn out process to move things into it. In terms of the customer experience, only 70 visits to the libraries, mostly to Central Library for face-to-face. And all those were dealt with there and then by the library staff, either giving them online access, doing it for them, or making an appointment for them at the Central Library. So there were only 70 visits. If you compare that digitally with, I think, 200,000 through the digital phone line use and also through the website, in terms of scale, 70 coming through for face-to-face is a small number. And I know it's an important number which does have to be dealt with. So there are facilities available for that. But in terms of the whole thing, when you think 200,000 altogether and 70 wanting face-to-face through the libraries. So they are being dealt with, and hopefully with the new phone line that's just gone in, or the new digital system. Already said the first week the stats have improved. I know it's only the first week and we'll have to monitor it over time, but they've gone from 65% to 89% in the first week.
My supplementary is tenuously linked, if you can do it, which is on sort of page 32 of the proposals. It's with regards to community grants programme. At the moment, we get £5,000 per councillor. It's saying here that it's going to now come from capital funding, which is available. Can you confirm that the community grant will stay at the same level as it is now for 324, or is there going to be a reduction?
I must interject at that point to say that that does come under Councillor Stolman's portfolio and not Councillor Patel's portfolio. Councillor Coker, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry to do this, but I'm going back to libraries again. People that are missing this service wouldn't forgive us for not keep raising this, Councillor Patel, and as long as I'm here, I will keep raising it. We are forcing added pressure to active community groups because of not being able to access the library for the information that they need. We talk about heating, lighting costs for us. We've got, now let me rephrase that. Are we thermally controlling our heating and lighting in libraries? So, for example, Devonport Library is open on a Monday and a Wednesday. Yeah. Other church group use it other days because they've got their own access. But I'm led to believe that the heating in that library is on 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's not being used, and surely the savings that we could save on that would actually, if we did that, would warrant the library being open more and will give you some leeway in your financial problems that you undoubtedly have. And also, if we are going to rely on our communities to provide the services that we're not doing, how can we not do something to help fund all the added pressure that community groups are under? Devonport Live and councillors, I will agree with Councillor Kelly, we are getting so much more complaints that people can't access services through libraries or through the telephones. And actually, when you add up the cost, we're then putting it through to councillor casework or officers. Have we actually reviewed the cost implications on the added costs for your policies? If you understand what I meant.
Yeah, sort of. On one of the points you made about using the savings to extend the hours, that's just going to fight itself, isn't it? So if I extend the hours by turning off the heating, by extending the hours from the savings I've made, I'm just raising the cost again. Yeah. So I'll hand over to Andy to answer the rest of that.
I think the question was raised, Councillor Coker, around the heating at Devonport Library, and I will most definitely follow that one up. But my understanding across most of our estate is the heating is controlled by the members of staff in the library. Some buildings are more complex because they don't have the modern heating systems in, so if the heating is turned on, it needs to be all turned off and vice versa. So we don't have necessarily in some of our older buildings a temperature control system which gives you the perhaps the granularity that you would enjoy in other more modern spaces. In terms of the cost of heat, I mean, I can certainly bring you the cost for Devonport Library of the heating. I don't have that to hand. That's in the FM space. I wasn't expecting that question today, to be honest with you, but I will certainly go away and have a look at that. I think the other point just around, the use of other groups, which I know are well used within Devonport Library. You will know that we've already explored with some of those groups how they might or might not want to extend the library opening hours, and those are matters that Sean has been discussing with those community groups. But the point of the library consultation, and I go back to the library's consultation, is really looking at all those opportunities for the community to help us keep those libraries open during very, very difficult financial circumstances. And we'd be very keen to work with ward councillors as we go through that consultation to explore what those options are and how we can support those communities to access our services over an extended period of time. In terms of the most vulnerable, and going back to your point about vulnerabilities within communities and customers accessing our services, we recently launched the garden waste scheme, and you've already heard from Pat today around some of the additional measures we have in for our digitally excluded and the most vulnerable customers in our city. One example that he gave only a few moments ago. I think what we've demonstrated with the garden waste scheme is we've been able, over a very short period of time, I think the opening of that scheme, to attract over £500,000 worth of revenue for the council and deal with 99% of all of those requests online. So our online services are being invested in. We're investing in our digital exclusion network. We're one of the strongest, I would say, across the country. We've got 70 groups working across the city supporting digital inclusion. And we continue to make sure that those people who need a service can get a service. Yeah, we will continue to work on that, as I say, over the following year as we review libraries and the provision of libraries across the city. Thank you.
Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry, Mark, but it is still on libraries. Where I don't see in the budget where you would have been looking at savings. So we'll go back to libraries. We're a trauma-informed city. We have some very vulnerable people in our city who are digitally excluded. Might need a blue badge, might need a bus pass, so on. Or let's just use Andy's example, garden waste, the garden waste one. You know, residents can't use digital, been on the phone for an hour and 20 something minutes, you told me. Library was shut. How much of a savings, or have you looked into opening the library to allow people of Plymouth to use their library to access service, to get the help with digital? Have you looked at that model or not?
I'll hand over to Andy for that one.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. So all of our libraries, when they're open, are able to provide digital assistance. You know, the most well-used library for digital assistance is Central, and that's why that is open 6 days a week. And we continue to do that. A lot of the feedback certainly we've had, certainly through the digital inclusion networks, is it's not just the local authority who provides that service, it's the voluntary and community sector, it's friends and family, it's next door neighbours, it's a whole host of support mechanisms that communities have. Even I would say, not directly because we provide PC access in other areas, but health and wellbeing hubs, as an example, is another point where customers can get support. And this is not uncommon across local government. This is commonplace across local government now. So we do provide as much service as we can through the channels that we've got, but with the limitations, obviously, of the budget that we have at the moment. And as I said before, it's where we can prioritise some of that need. And what Sean does, and I know he does this very diligently, is looking at footfall across our libraries and how customers have previously accessed our libraries to optimise those hours the best that we can. Thank you.
And I'm full aware, Andy, you know I'm full aware about the Central Library and what the Central Library offers, but I'm talking about, you know, some of our most vulnerable areas, our deprived areas of the city, Devonport, Ham, St Budo. Do you know what I mean? That is not offering that service. So some of our you know, our residents who, one, we're going to be asking, you know, in April is an increase on council tax rise, so on and so on. I won't list the amount of increases that this proposal budget is giving. You know, can't afford to go into central library, you know, to get that valuable, you know, concessionary fare thing. So what I'm trying to say to you, have you looked at those local libraries and offering that service? It could come to a savings, that's what I'm trying to say to you. And you would have a bigger footfall then because people would be using the library.
So I think in direct response to that, we maximise our library opening hours, as I've already said, and we provide PC access or digital access at our library, so customers can get that support if they need it. I'll go back to my previous point, which is around digital exclusion and how we deal with digital exclusion. So we're not expecting people to travel into the city centre. We have a contact centre that's open Monday to Friday. And as I've mentioned before, those people who need to access the contact centre because they're excluded from using digital, they're vulnerable, then we put them onto a priority line and they get quick and fast access to the contact centre. And Councillor Patel has already alluded to the changes that was made last week and the improved performance that we're seeing. So that is how we're dealing with it at the moment, and I will go back to the consultation, and we're quite happy because members will be part of that consultation to feed into how we provision our library service moving forward, and some of those improvements and some of the things that you've mentioned will be included and will be looked at as part of that. Thank you.
Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you. A lot of what I was going to ask has sort of been covered by other people. I mean, I think you could perhaps argue, Andy, that Central is open the longest because it's used more, but maybe it's the most used one because it's open more. And actually, Councillor Patel, if I only had 70 people using that service in a year, I think that would alarm me as a cabinet member. I think how that footfall compares to the one-stop shop, I assume it's absolutely minimal in comparison. And so I would be concerned, and I had a phone call this morning from a woman in my ward who absolutely just gave up, and she's a pensioner, and she said, I just don't understand why I can't access the council in the way I used to. And so I guess I want to be sure that we are really assuring ourselves that to achieve these budget savings, we're not excluding people, because we probably can all give an example of people who've rung us and said, oh, I gave up. People who have in the past not had a problem contacting the council. And I was going to mention Baroness Sanderson's review of libraries. So she's been tasked by DCMS to come up with a strategy to improve library service and provision. And it's quite a hopeful, optimistic brief she's been given. And I wondered if we contributed to that, and then whether whatever comes out of that will feed into your 23-24 plan around our libraries, because I think it's important to tell her and her inquiry that we are aspirational around our libraries replacing the one-stop shop provision. And I really feel it's only 70 people going to Central Library. That doesn't feel to me like a level of interaction with that new way of doing things that would satisfy me, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll hand over to Sean in a moment. I know we're tight for time. As part of the work that Sean's been doing, I noticed he's come on the screen, so I'll hand over to him in a second. We are part of the National Libraries group, so this is across all local authorities who choose to be part of that. It's part of the British Library, and I am aware of the review that you allude to, which is very welcome, because of course we want to see our libraries thrive, we want to see them change, and they are great community assets. So we do want those protected. And part of the reason we're in that network is because the British Library being the key lead for libraries across the UK, and there's some great work that they're doing in collaboration with Plymouth and other local authorities. So I think it's a really welcome review, and it may in the future lead to future funding for library services across the country and for local authorities, and we will obviously pursue that, and we will lobby for that as we move forward. Sean, is there anything else you want to add about the library network?
Just about the review, really. Yeah, I'm aware the review's going on. We haven't been approached directly to say anything. I'm sure there will be channels where in the future where we will be able to add anything. But we actually welcome the review, and we're looking forward to see what comes out of that. We do want to contribute, and we'll wait until the channel opens. With regard to the network we're part of, the Living Knowledge Network, that is fantastic. It's British Library led, which is great for us. We feel we're at a kind of top table there. There's 30 local authorities part of the network. We benefit being part of that in a number of ways. We get an exhibition sent to us this year, every year, I beg pardon. We are able to, our customers are able to access talks and presentations about culture, lifestyle and so on, either live or recorded, which mostly take place in London. And we're able to network with other people as well, which we all benefit from. So yeah, it's great. And thanks for mentioning that, Andy.
All right, thank you. Just to be minded that we've got 4 minutes left on the clock. We have two supplementary from Councillor Lang, and then just to say we have Councillor Kelly and Councillor Poyser. So if you can make your questions pretty sharp and the replies be clear and concise, be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mine is very quick. The as I understand it, the Baroness Sanderson's work is anybody can contribute to it, and I'd be really keen for Plymouth to tell her how we envisage our libraries being used, because that might, okay, it's not going to help this budget, but might help future budgets if it determines government policy differently around libraries. And just my point around only 70 people coming to the Central Library, I just wondered if you had anything to say on that, Councillor Patel.
So that's the figures that I don't think it's for the whole year. I think it was the 70 was for the last 4 months. I'm sure I read out. Yeah, it says in the last 4 months, 70 customers have come into libraries. So that's just not Central Library. That's also the other libraries as well.
For the first stop shop.
The first stop shop service, which was moved into libraries. So and it did surprise me to see that the figures were so low for face to face. The libraries are open normal hour, so the normal hours that they're open are advertised. So you know, St Budo Library is open 2.5 days a week. Yours, you said, is open 2 days a week. It's the same 2 days. Yeah, so people should be know when to access the services that they want. So it did surprise me at how low the numbers were. I take your point on board about the consultation, and I'll make sure that we do something around that and put that in.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. As I said, just bear in mind time, please.
Point of order, please. Point of order, Chair. It's gone 1 o'clock.
Right. Leisure facilities, specifically pools, concerns about the potential increase when we're talking about community engagement, health and well-being, which we discussed in the previous session. What sort of shaping has been looked at, Councillor Patel, with regards to increasing costs and diminishing returns because fewer people choose to pay for those services? And Tyneside especially is very dear to me. It's one that I walk around. I think the whole, when you talk about revenue generation, having the sessions, whether it's lifeguarding issues, but I'm sure there'll be voluntary lifeguards, you really want that place buzzing with lots of people rather than maybe a dozen or so people in the pool at any time. So I think, what are your considerations with regards to increasing or introducing costs for the leisure facilities, lowering engagement, and in turn, potentially lowering revenue because fewer people will turn up?
So in terms of Tinside, which is the one you particularly mentioned here, we are looking at other budget generating schemes. So the events side of it has been improved there, and we are doing other stuff there to generate the revenues to help keep the other costs down. You know, the film nights were quite successful there, and what have you, and all that budget or revenue generation helps keeps other costs down. So the cost of going into the pool is kept down because we're generating this other income from other sources. So, you know, we'll see how it pans out this season. We're planning to do more through the events team at Tinside and see how that works.
Okay, do you have a supplementary? Yeah, okay, Councillor Poisey, do you want to quickly fire your point, and then we can make this as quick as possible?
Just very quickly, we were just trying to make sure whereabouts public conveniences are and where they sit under whose budget.
Sorry, that's under corporate property.
It's under Mark Shea, was it?
Yeah.
Toilets. Yeah. There's.
Well, one and the same.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, I think that's probably Councillor Wakeham's, is it, or is it sort of fall under corporate property?
It's us, Councillor Shea. And it's under corporate property, which was yesterday. But I'm quite happy to discuss that outside.
That's it. Just to say, thank you very much all for your contribution, Councillor Patel and David, Anthony, Andy, and etc. We'll break now for dinner and look forward to seeing you all back at 2 o'clock. And needless to say, we're getting towards the end now, so enjoy, take care.